The crystalline throne room of Astoria vibrated with tension as Queen Lyra Vax paced before the star map, hovering in the chamber's center. Her purple skin caught the light of 3 moons streaming through the panoramic windows, casting faint lavender shadows across the polished floor. At merely 22 cycles old, she was the youngest sovereign in the Seven-System Alliance. Yet the weight of her entire telepathic species rested upon her slender shoulders. "The humans have gone too far this time," she said, her voice carrying the musical lilt characteristic of the Luminar race. "4 of our scientists dead, research destroyed, and they dare claim innocence." Prime Minister Vorden, his aged face creased with concern, bowed deeply. "The evidence against Captain Elian Krell is substantial, Your Luminescence." Surveillance placed him at the Nexus Research Facility minutes before the explosion. Lyra closed her eyes, fighting the flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm her usually disciplined mind. As a Luminar, she could sense the surface thoughts of her own kind without effort. But humans remained frustratingly opaque, unpredictable, volatile, and now, apparently murderous. "Issued the order," she commanded, her delicate fingers curling into fists. "Captain Krell is to be captured and brought to Astoria for trial. The penalty for terrorism against the Luminar crown is death." The royal guards saluted, their armor catching the ambient light. Vorden lingered after they departed, his expression unreadable even to Lyra's telepathic senses. "Your Luminescence, this action could trigger diplomatic consequences. The Earth Coalition has been looking for any excuse to 4 of our people are dead."
Vorden,
she interrupted, violet eyes flashing. "I will not appear weak before those who would harm us." Cross the void of space. On the human colony of Terra Nova, Captain Elian Krell stood at his apartment window, watching ships dock and depart from the spaceport. At 34, his face carried the distinguished marks of both military service and diplomatic missions a scar above one eyebrow, weather-lined skin, and eyes that had seen too much conflict. When his communication device chimed with an encrypted message, he wasn't surprised by its contents. The Luminor Queen had issued his arrest warrant exactly as his sources had predicted. "Right on schedule," he murmured, shutting down the device. Instead of running or hiding, Ilian packed a single small bag. Within the hour, he boarded a transport vessel bound for Astoria. The Luminar homeworld, a journey few humans had made willingly, and none under a death sentence. 3 days later, Queen Lyra was reviewing defense protocols when the palace alarms sounded. She rose swiftly, her flowing silver robes cascading around her as guards rushed into the throne room. "Your Luminescence," the captain of her guard reported breathlessly. "A human has breached our outer security perimeter." He surrendered immediately, claiming diplomatic immunity and requesting an audience with you. "A human." Here Lyra's brow furrowed. "Identity." He identified himself as Captain Elian Krell of the Earth Coalition. The throne room fell silent. Lyra sank slowly back onto her throne, genuine surprise replacing her usual composed expression. "The very man we seek comes willingly to our doorstep," she whispered almost to herself, then louder, "Bring him to me." Unarmed, restrained, and under heavy guard. Minutes later, the doors swung open to reveal a tall human male surrounded by wary Luminar guards. Despite the energy restraints binding his wrists, Captain Elian Krell walked with unexpected dignity. His eyes a deep earth brown, unfamiliar on Astoria met, Lyra's without fear or subservience. "Your Majesty," he said in flawless Luminor, bowing precisely to protocol depth, "I believe you've been looking for me." Lyra leaned forward, violet eyes narrowing. "You come to surrender, human." A small, enigmatic smile touched his lips. "No, Your Luminescence. I come to prevent a war and to tell you that we're both being played by someone far more dangerous than either of us suspects." Queen Lyra Vax stared at the human before her, trying to penetrate the mental barrier that all humans naturally possessed against Luminar telepathy. Captain Elian Krell stood unflinching under her gaze. His posture relaxed, despite the restraints and the dozen guards flanking him. "A bold claim," Lyra finally said, gesturing for her attendants to step back. "4 of my people lie dead, and evidence points directly to you." Evidence that appeared far too conveniently, Elian replied, his voice steady. May I approach your luminescence? What I carry is for your eyes alone. Prime Minister Vorden stepped forward immediately. Absolutely not. This could be an assassination attempt. If I wanted you dead, Elian said to Lyra, ignoring Vorden, I wouldn't have walked through your front door and announced myself. Lyra studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Release his restraints, Your Majesty. Vorden protested. Do it, she commanded, her tone brooking no argument. When the energy cuffs deactivated, Elian slowly reached into his jacket and extracted a small data crystal. Security footage from 3 different angles, showing me at a diplomatic function on Terra Nova during the explosion. Also included are communications intercepted between unknown parties. Discussing the successful elimination of Luminar research progress, Lyra accepted the crystal, her fingers briefly touching. She was surprised by the warmth of his skin compared to the naturally cooler temperature of her people. Something passed between them in that moment. Not telepathy, but a spark of recognition. Why bring this personally? Why not through channels? She asked, suddenly aware of how young she must appear to this weathered human diplomat. Because, Elian said grimly, I believe the sabotage was orchestrated by elements within both our governments. The research at Nexus was getting too close to something powerful technology that could render certain profitable enterprises obsolete, Vorden scoffed. Conspiracy theories from a desperate man. Lyra inserted the crystal into her personal console. The holographic display showed irrefutable proof of Elian's alibi, followed by encrypted communications that made her blood run cold. These mention the Draconic Syndicate, she said, looking up sharply. The largest weapons manufacturer in the quadrant. Elian nodded. Who stands to lose everything if the energy harmonization research at Nexus succeeds? Peace isn't profitable for everyone, Your Luminescence. Later that evening, after dismissing her counsel over vehement protests, Lyra sat alone with Elian in her private study. The 3 moons cast silver-purple light through the crystal windows as they reviewed the evidence together. Why would you risk your life coming here? She asked finally. Your own people might consider this treason. Elian's eyes met hers with unexpected vulnerability. My sister was stationed at Proxima Colony 3 years ago, when border tensions last flared. She died in the crossfire. I've seen firsthand what happens when our peoples fight. I won't let it happen again over manufactured grievances. Something in his voice, raw honesty that no Luminar could fake even with telepathy, touched Lyra deeply. For the first time, she saw beyond the human exterior to the person beneath. I lost my parents in that same conflict, she admitted quietly. I was crowned the following week. 20 years old and suddenly responsible for millions of lives. Elian's expression softened. That's why we can't let them manipulate us again. As dawn broke over Astoria's crystal spires, an uneasy alliance had formed between the young alien queen and the human captain. Lyra had not rescinded the charge as politically impossible without proof, but had secretly granted Elian protected status to investigate further. Neither realized that Vorden had already dispatched a private message to his true employers, warning that their carefully laid plans had encountered an unexpected complication. The royal archives were silent, save for the occasional whisper of ancient paper as Lyra turned pages of diplomatic records. Beside her, Elian compiled data on a secure tablet, careful to avoid the palace's main network. 3 previous incidents in the last decade, he murmured, pushing the tablet toward her. Each one attributed to human aggression, each one benefiting the Draconic Syndicate through emergency military contracts. Lyra's violet eyes narrowed as she scanned his findings. And here, look at these resource allocation approvals. Vorden has been redirecting funds to shell corporations that trace back to Draconic subsidiaries. Your Prime Minister and at least 2 human generals, Elian confirmed. They've been playing both sides, orchestrating tensions to maintain the military-industrial complex. They worked in close proximity, their shoulders occasionally brushing. Each contact sent an unusual warmth through Lyra's naturally cool skin. She found herself increasingly aware of his movements, his senorthy and unfamiliar, yet not unpleasant. The council meeting is in 1 hour, Lyra said, reluctantly pulling away. I need to prepare my arguments carefully. Vorden has too many allies. Elion caught her hand impulsively, then released it just as quickly. Be careful. If he suspects we know, I'm not without resources, Captain, she replied with a slight smile. My youth makes them underestimate me. It always has. When she had gone, Elion continued his research, unaware of being watched. In the corridor outside, Lady Thelia, Lyra's childhood friend and lady-in-waiting, observed the human with curious eyes before hurrying after her queen. You've spent considerable time with the human, Thelia noted, as she helped Lyra prepare for the council. The court is talking. Let them talk, Lyra replied, though a faint lavender blush colored her cheeks. He's helping uncover a conspiracy that threatens both our worlds. Is that all he's doing? Thelia asked gently. I've known you since we were children, Lyra. I recognize that look. Lyra turned away, adjusting her ceremonial collar. Don't be ridiculous. He's human. And yet, you seem more alive in his presence than I've seen since before your coronation. The council meeting proceeded as anticipated, Orden arguing vehemently for Elion's immediate execution, citing security concerns and diplomatic precedent. Lyra countered with requests for further investigation, carefully avoiding any mention of their discoveries. The evidence suggests broader implications, she stated firmly. As sovereign, I choose to exercise caution before potentially triggering an interspecies incident. Vorden's face remained impassive, but Lyra caught the flash of calculation in his eyes. Of course, your luminescence. Wisdom beyond your years, as always. That night, as the palace slept, Lyra found herself unable to rest. She wandered to the royal gardens, seeking solace among the bioluminescent flora. To her surprise, Elion was there, silhouetted against the glowing blue foliage. Couldn't sleep either? She asked, approaching him. He turned, starlight reflecting in his eyes. Too much at stake, they stood in companionable silence, watching the floating pollen particles create miniature constellations in the night air. On Earth, we have a saying, Elion finally spoke. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But I'm beginning to think that's insufficient for what we face. And what would be sufficient? Lyra asked, suddenly very aware of their solitude. Trust, he said simply. Something neither of our species has ever fully extended to the other. When he looked at her, something shifted in the space between them, a boundary crossed, a possibility acknowledged. Without conscious thought, Lyra found herself stepping closer, her hand rising to touch the strange, fascinating texture of his face. We should return inside, she whispered, even as her body betrayed her words by moving nearer. We should, he agreed, making no move to leave. Neither noticed the shadow that detached itself from behind a crystalline tree, nor the silent figure that hurried back toward the palace with news that would shatter their fragile alliance before dawn broke over. Astoria. The royal alarm jolted Lyra from sleep just before dawn. Palace guards burst into her chambers, led by Commander Zenith, her most trusted security officer. Your luminescence, you must come quickly, he urged. There's been an incident. Minutes later, Lyra stood in the diplomatic wing, staring at the chaos before her. Elion's quarters had been ransacked, data crystals shattered on the floor. A trail of crimson human blood, jarring against the pearlescent palace floors, led to the balcony. Captain Krell, she demanded, fighting to keep her voice steady. It's missing your luminescence, Zenith reported, and the evidence suggests he wasn't taken willingly. Search the grounds immediately, she ordered. I want him found. Prime Minister Vorden appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. It appears your trust was misplaced. Your luminescence. We've discovered transmissions sent from this room to Earth Military Command, containing sensitive luminar defense protocols.
Iris.
The evidence too convenient? The timing too perfect? Show me these transmissions. I've already ordered increased military readiness, Vorden continued, ignoring her request. The human delegation on Proxima has been detained for questioning. You've done what? Lyra turned sharply. Without my authorization, emergency protocols. Your luminescence. The council voted while you were being secured. His smile didn't reach his eyes. For your protection, of course, before Lyra could respond. Thelia appeared at her side, casually passing her a small communication device hidden within a ceremonial cloth, your formal morning attire. Majesty, she said with a meaningful glance. For the council session, hours later, alone in her chambers, Lyra activated the device. Elian's face appeared, bloodied, but alive. I'm sorry for the theatrics, he said quietly. Vorden's assassins came before dawn. Your guard commander Zenith helped me escape, but we had to make it look convincing. He glanced over his shoulder. We found their communication hub. The Draconic Syndicate isn't just profiting from the conflict they're engineering it. Vorden has given them access to Luminar weapon systems in exchange for control of 3 outer colonies once hostilities commence. Where are you? She whispered. The ancient temple in the Whispering Valley. Come alone if you can. His eyes softened. Be careful, Lyra. It was the first time he had used her name without title. It should have offended her royal sensibilities. Instead, it warmed something deep within her, using passages known only to the royal lineage. Lyra slipped from the palace as twilight fell. The Whispering Valley lay 2 hours from the capital. Its ancient temple carved into living crystal millions of years before even the Luminar walked. Astoria, she found Elian and Zenith inside, surrounded by holographic evidence displays. When Elian saw her, he moved forward instinctively, then hesitated. Remembering their respective positions, Lyra made the decision for them both, closing the distance and embracing him with a fierceness that surprised her. I thought you were dead, she admitted against his shoulder. Not yet, he replied softly, his arms encircling her, though Vorden's certainly trying. They spent the night analyzing the evidence, preparing their case against the conspiracy. During a rare moment of rest, they found themselves alone beneath the temple's crystal dome, the 3 moons casting shifting patterns across their faces. If we succeed, Elian said quietly, what happens after? Lyra looked at him, understanding the real question. I don't know. There's no precedent for ... this. She gestured between them.
Out.
He echoed, a smile touching his lips. Instead of answering, she leaned forward, pressing her lips to his an ancient gesture common to both their species. The contact was electric, his warmth against her coolness, creating a perfect equilibrium. When they parted, both understood that something irrevocable had changed. The Luminor sovereign and a human diplomat, she whispered. The council would never accept it. Then perhaps, he said, tracing the delicate patterns on her purple skin. We need to change more than just who controls the weapons. Dawn broke with the news that Vorden had declared Lyra temporarily unfit to rule, citing unnatural foreign influence. In one stroke, he had taken control of the government and branded both, Lyra and Elian, as traitors. As royal guards loyal to Vorden approached the temple, Lyra and Elian stood together at the entrance, hands linked in a gesture forbidden by centuries of mutual distrust. Whatever happens, Elian said, we've already won something important. Lyra squeezed his hand, violet eyes resolute. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. The Galactic Council chambers on neutral Centauri Prime buzzed with unprecedented activity. Representatives from both human and Luminar worlds filled the ancient amphitheater. Tension visible in rigid postures and careful distances maintained between delegations. 6 weeks had passed since Lyra and Elian had fled the temple with Commander Zenith and a small band of loyal guards. 6 weeks of guerrilla transmissions, leaked evidence, growing public unrest on both worlds as citizens began questioning the narrative of inevitable conflict. They're ready for you, Thelia said, entering the small preparation chamber where Lyra and Elian waited. Through dedicated effort and considerable risk, she had become their most valuable agent within the palace, gathering evidence and building a network of supporters. Lyra wore a simple silver gown rather than her full royal regalia, statement that this appearance was about truth, not power. Beside her, Elian stood in the formal black uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, the insignia removed as an acknowledgement of his technical fugitive status. No matter what happens in there, he said quietly, we've shown that another way is possible. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining in what had become a familiar gesture of mutual support. They entered the chamber together, walking down the central aisle toward the speaker's platform. Whispers followed their progress, some scandalized, others curious, a few openly supportive. On the raised dais sat the interim governments of both worlds, Bourdon looking considerably less composed than usual, flanked by nervous council members. Across from them, the human generals implicated in the conspiracy, their faces grim. "Representatives of Earth and Astoria," Lyra began, her musical voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. "We come before you with evidence of treason against both our peoples." For the next hour, they presented their case, methodically financial records, intercepted communications, weapons contracts, and finally, testimony from Draconic's insiders who had chosen to cooperate rather than face interstellar justice. When Worden rose to object, his own lieutenant stepped forward with the final piece of evidence, recorded orders from Worden himself to assassinate the four Luminar scientists when their research threatened the weapons monopoly. The chamber erupted in chaos. In the confusion, Worden lunged toward Lyra, a concealed energy weapon appearing in his hand. Elian moved without thinking, placing himself between them as guards rushed forward. The blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him backward into Lyra's arms. "Always the hero," she whispered, cradling him as medical personnel rushed forward. "Occupational hazard," he managed through gritted teeth. 3 days later, with Elian recovering in the diplomatic medical facility, the Galactic Council rendered its decision. The conspiracy was officially recognized, the perpetrators arrested, and emergency elections ordered on both worlds. "They're calling it the Harmony Accords," Thelia reported, bringing news to Elian's recovery room, where Lyra had barely left his side. "The first truly cooperative treaty between our peoples. Your names are being put forward as joint ambassadors for the implementation committee." "Ambassadors," Elian echoed, sitting up with a wince. "That's a step down for you. Your luminescence." Lyra smiled, the expression transforming her already beautiful features. "Perhaps, but it comes with fewer restrictions on personal attachments." 3 months later, as spring blossomed on Astoria, an unprecedented ceremony took place in the royal gardens. Under a canopy of bioluminescent flowers, Lyra and Elian exchanged vows from both traditions, their hands joined before representatives of both worlds. "There will still be those who oppose us," Elian said later, as they watched the 3 moons rise from the palace balcony. "Change never comes easily. True progress never does," Lyra agreed, leaning into his embrace. "But we've shown them something powerful, that when we look past centuries of mistrust, we might find something worth fighting for." "Peace?" he asked, smiling down at her. She reached up, tracing the now familiar contours of his face. "That too." As the stars emerged in Astoria's night sky, 2 figures stood silhouetted against the lights of the capital city, different in origin, biology, and culture, yet united by something stronger than all those differences. Their unique bond had not only saved their worlds from conflict, but opened the door to possibilities neither species had imagined. Above them, a shooting star traced a brilliant path across the heavens, not an ending, but a beginning. The first chapter in a story that would be told across the stars for generations to come,